fear. And I think that like along with that runs a deep strand of misogyny often. And so those go together, along of course with patriarchy, obviously. So the question of who can do what is significant, but equally like, oh, that's women's stuff. Women do that. There's a way in which that very denigration creates a space where women do that. And so I see that over and over again. I also want to say, I was glad you brought up the words reproductive justice, because that is an important motivating concept activating my book. I came of age under Roe v. Wade, and the key word was choice. But we know now that that's the wrong word, in the sense that throughout time and in our own day, a simple model of choice is way too simple. Many women don't have that choice. They do not have the luxury of choice. And we cannot have a movement that is focused only on women who do have the choice. And so we have to understand a wider set of circumstances. And some of those are not pretty stories, but that's okay, because that's how it is. And we need those stories also. I'm not sure I'm actually answering your question. I do think for most of time, women have taken care of other women's reproductive needs because they're the ones who knew. Not always. I mean, Hippocratic, there's a big argument in classics. Like, is it that the Hippocratic texts are what men learned from women, or is it just all male fantasy, they didn't know nothing? I tend towards the first, because like some of the stuff they say has continued to be understood as efficacious for a really long time afterwards. But how would we know, right? But for so much of history, I see women taking care of other women's needs. Great, I say. You know, it works.
Yeah, and there's that interesting tension at various points about who's able to write, who's able to read, and therefore who would access what information from where, and and that's a recurring thing of like, well, how would that have trickled back down, or did it make its way up? Who was collecting what information? There was a question there. Go for it.
In light of abortion being used as a symbol to basically subjugate women, you give the example of ancient Rome, essentially being a backlash to women gaining rights. I know that's Sylvia Benedict, she talks about medieval Europe having as a response to the labour shortage from the Black Death. In the modern context, I would say both of those things are quite relevant. Obviously, women the last 4 decades, 5 decades have gained a lot of rights, and currently you've got creeps like Musk obsessed with babies. I was wondering what you would say are the forces, I suppose, that are kind of causing the movement in America and also the infancy of one in the UK.
It's less infant than we'd like over here.
Well, you know, historians never like to talk about today because we live in the past. But I see where we are as backlash to third wave feminism in the 60s and 70s. It seems too simple to be true, and yet it is. And that's what I think is happening. The most recent horrors, honestly, I'm kind of baffled. Horrified. I was just saying to a friend, I often say, like, we're living in a dumpster fire. And I'm like, oh, wait, what do we call those here? We finally decided maybe it's a skip fire. But at any rate, you get the concept. I think all of our interpretive powers are stretched right now. And I'm going to just like segue into something slightly different. The book ends on an optimistic note, which you may feel is like pie-eyed and foolish. But the reason it ends on an optimistic note is that what I see over the very long haul is that these moments burn out. The moment I am living in right now of intense repression in the United States will not last, because they don't last. They're miserable while they last. They cause untold harm, but they don't endure. They burn out. Like we had one in America, sort of turn of the 19th, 20th century. We had one in the 40s and 50s, and we're in one now. And each time they burn out. The bigger picture, I'm still optimistic, and I think it's because if I were pessimistic, what would I do when I get out of bed every morning? How would I fight if I were not? But this part, the reproductive rights part, I do feel we will get through this. I do believe we will get through the other, but I don't currently see the path. I'll be honest. Like, I believe it, but I'm not sure how we get there.
I'm going to come to yours, but just reflecting on that question of like this moment. Your book has 2 different titles in 2 different places. So in the UK, we've got Abortion in History, says what it does on the tin. In the US, it's called Pushback, the 2,500-year fight to thwart women by restricting abortion. Why?
Well, without meaning to diss my American publisher, I fought really hard against that title. I came up with about 40 other titles. Do you know how hard it is to come up with 40 titles? And so I'd have these conversations. They don't let you talk to like the boss. You talk to your editor and you have these conversations like you generate another 10 to 12 titles. They go into a meeting, someone drives a truck over them evidently, and then you come back and rinse and repeat. I understand that like the boss person of my press in America really likes the gender backlash argument. Great, I like it too. Like I think it does things. It has legs. Susan Faludi wrote a very influential book 30 years ago called Backlash. So we can't call it that because it's been taken. And so the title had to sound like that. I do not understand the long subtitle. To me, that's burying the lead, and I don't understand it. But I'm not a marketer, right? They're a press. Their job is to sell books, and so I just grit my teeth a lot. But I'm baffled. Like,
Because I had wondered if it was a case of what it is on the shelf, and that in America, picking up a book that says Abortion in History in big letters across the front says a different thing to picking up a book that does not say abortion on the cover.
well, my preferred title, just to say, was Long Before Roe, A History of Abortion. Because I thought that really said it. Now, I didn't think that would be the title here because Roe doesn't have the same resonances. It wouldn't. But I like Long Before Roe, but that bit the dust. I see these files on my computer called LBR. I'm like, LBR, oh, right, that phase. And maybe that is. Maybe it is that. Maybe that taking that book off the shelf. I don't know. I see other books with abortion in the title. So, again, I don't run a press, you know?
You had a question.
Yeah, thank you. The book sounds fantastic. I'm looking forward to picking it up. I was just curious, I'm not a historian, so I don't know anything about this. What's causing the sort of delay before we get a backlash, right? So you were talking about the Greeks having this really permissive approach to abortion, and then a few hundred years later we get the Romans. And then you said 1960s, 70s, we get second, third wave feminism going on. And then in the 2020s, we get, so what's the delay that's happening there?
Well, I'm not an expert on the last 50 years. It was all I could do to get to 1973, I'll be honest. We're living in a very peculiar, weird moment because the abortion restriction movement in America was funded by conservative billionaires in an evil cahoots with certain conservative Republicans who saw abortion as the issue that could enroll evangelical Americans into their political movement. It's like a very calculated move. I think the reason it has traction is to do with this backlash phenomenon, but it's a very specific and evil, calculated, specific political move. So there's two things going on there together, and that helps to explain the timing.
Yeah, and there's some interesting writing as well about the connections where that money happens around the anti-trans movements, and if you look at where the money has run into trying to push the legal boundaries of abortion in this country, they're using disability rights as a wedge issue, and they're using trans people as a wedge issue to try and clamp it down because they know that they can't come for abortion just yet, directly, I think, and we need to keep it that way. We are out of time, so I hope there weren't too many questions online. If there were, then I can always ask Mary later and then send them your way. Thank you for coming out tonight. Please do take this phenomenal book home and read it and throw it at people. It's quite heavy. Maybe not. Gently gift it to the people in your life who might need some convincing, or might need the tools to do the convincing with the people that are in their lives, because it's so full of juicy nuggets and surprisingly funny, and accessible, as a history and as a place to build movement from. So thank you for this phenomenal book, and will you join me in thanking Mary Fasel for being with us tonight? And join the